The sun hung like a furnace over the cracked asphalt of the roadside station, its heat warping the air into shimmering waves that distorted the horizon. Dust devils swirled lazily around the pumps, carrying the faint tang of exhaust and sun-baked rubber. Theo Marrow, just 13, stood alone by the edge of the lot, his thin frame swallowed by the shadow of a rusted vending machine. His backpack slumped at his feet, zipper half open, spilling out a crumpled water bottle and a faded notebook. Sweat carved paths down his dust-streaked face, but it was the fear in his eyes that cut deepest, wide, haunted, like a cornered animal waiting for the trap to snap. He'd been walking for hours, thumb out to no avail, the weight of secrets too heavy for legs that young. Strangers had eyed him from their passing trucks, but none stopped. Now, as the afternoon dragged into eternity, a low rumble pierced the silence, growing from a distant growl to a thunderous roar that shook the ground. A convoy of motorcycles crested the rise, 20 strong, their chrome gleaming like polished steel under the relentless light. The iron promise riders cut through the haze like a blade, engines snarling in unison, leather vests patched with the club's emblem, a clenched fist around a broken chain. Leading them was Grant "Stone" Keller, 52 years etched into every line of his weathered face, his greying beard framing a jaw set like granite. The road had been his exile for decades, each mile a stitch over old wounds. He'd lost too much to count, comrades in forgotten skirmishes, a life that might have been. But the club was his anchor, the chosen family that demanded nothing but loyalty in return. As they pulled into the station, tires crunching gravel, Grant's bike eased to a stop near the pumps, his crew fanned out, dismounting with the practiced ease of men who lived on the edge of the wind. But it was Theo who caught Grant's eye first. The boy, shrinking back as if the bikers were wolves closing in. Grant killed the engine, the sudden quiet amplifying the boy's shallow breaths. He swung a leg over the saddle, boots hitting the pavement with a solid thud that echoed his nickname. Up close, Theo looked even smaller, his clothes threadbare, hands trembling as he clutched something against his chest. "You all right, kid?" Grant's voice was gravel-low, laced with the weariness of too many sun-scorched days. He didn't crowd the boy, just leaned against his bike, arms crossed over a chest broad from years of hauling freight and fighting shadows. The other riders hung back, respecting the moment, Jax with his scarred knuckles, Lena the medic patching up more than wounds, all of them bound by oaths, unspoken. Theo's gaze darted to the photo in his grip, then up to Grant's face. Recognition flickered there, hesitant, like a spark in dry tinder. I been waiting for someone like you," the boy stammered, voice cracking under the heat. He extended the picture, edges frayed from years of handling, the image of a woman staring back, dark hair framing a smile that held both fire and fragility. Grant's world tilted. He took it with steady hands, but his breath caught, a vice squeezing his ribs. Her name was Elena, his Elena, from a lifetime ago, when promises were whispered under depot lights before the world tore her away. She'd vanished after speaking out against the rot in the logistics yard. The kind of corruption that swallowed whistleblowers whole. Grant had searched, raged, then buried it under the lie they'd fed him. She left, started over, gone for good. But here she was, frozen in time, her eyes accusing him across the years. The photo slipped from his fingers, fluttering to the asphalt like a fallen leaf. Grant's knees buckled, the tough exterior fracturing as he sank to the ground, dust puffing around him. Tears carved hot trails down his cheeks, unbidden, raw. A grown man crumbling like a child before a ghost. The crew froze, the air thick with unspoken questions. But no one moved to help. This was Grant's storm. Theo knelt beside him, small hand on the biker's shoulder. "She's my mom," the boy whispered. Voice steady now, carrying a courage that belied his age. "People come to our place at night, asking questions, threats. She told me once if I ever saw a rider like you." "Show this." Said you'd come back for her promise." Grant's sobs quieted, replaced by a ragged inhale. He looked up, the sun haloing Theo's face, turning the boy into a beacon amid the glare. The promise, Elena's words echoing from their last night together. "If things go south, Stone, you'll find me. Swear it." He'd sworn, then failed, letting the miles and the lies bury it. But now, this child, her child, stood as living proof. Redemption didn't erase the failure, it demanded he face it. Grant rose slowly, wiping his face with a calloused palm, the photo tucked into his vest like a talisman. "We're family now, kid," he said, voice thick but resolute. "Iron promise doesn't break oaths. Tell me everything." As the crew refueled, engines idling like patient beasts, Theo spilled the fragments. Nights of shadows at the door, whispers of sealed files and vanished complaints, a trail leading back to the depot's underbelly. Grant listened, the pieces slotting into place, igniting a fire long banked. The convoy would detour quietly, tracing shell companies and buried truths. No fanfare, no vengeance, just justice, the kind that honored the fallen and protected the fragile. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the lot, but for the first time in years, Grant felt the weight lift, replaced by purpose. Theo climbed onto the back of Grant's bike, arms tentative around the rider's waist, as the group roared to life once more. The road ahead twisted into uncertainty, but the promise bound them tighter than chains. In a world of forgotten words, this one would echo, drawing lines in the dust that no force could erase. And now, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The engines thrummed like a heartbeat as the convoy sliced through the fading light, the desert blurring into streaks of ochre and shadow. Grant felt Theo's grip tighten around his waist, the boy's slight weight a reminder of fragility amid the roar. Wind whipped at their faces, carrying the sharp bite of sagebrush and cooling the day's lingering heat. Behind them, the iron promise riders formed a protective wedge, Jax's bike humming steady on the flank, Lena's eyes scanning the horizon for threats unseen. Grant's mind raced faster than the throttle. Elena's face in that photo, her smile a ghost that clawed at buried regrets. He'd promised to shield her from the depot's shadows, the web of favors and silenced voices that turned honest work into a graveyard of secrets. But life had pulled him away, the club becoming his refuge, until this boy bridged the chasm with a single trembling hand. They rode for hours, the sun surrendering to a bruised twilight that painted the sky in veins of purple and gold. Theo's voice cut through the wind in fits and starts, piecing together fragments of a life Grant had only imagined in nightmares. "Mom kept the photo hidden," the boy shouted over the engine's growl. "Said it was from before I was born, the men at night. They knock soft, like they're afraid of waking ghosts. Ask if she's heard from the old crew. She tells them to leave, but they don't always." Grant's jaw clenched, the leather of his gloves creaking as he gripped the handlebars. The depot, Haven Freight, they'd called it back then, a sprawling yard of rusted containers and flickering floodlights, where Eleanor had uncovered ledgers fudged with ghost shipments, bribes funneled through faceless firms. She'd filed a quiet report, thinking justice was a switch she could flip. Instead, it vanished her. The official word, a cold dismissal. Voluntary departure. No leads. Grant had swallowed it, too broken to dig deeper, letting the road numb the ache. As stars pricked the velvet dome overhead, the convoy veered onto a forgotten service road, gravel spitting under tires like whispered warnings. They pulled into the shadow of an abandoned silo, its silhouette a sentinel against the night. The riders killed their engines one by one, the silence crashing down heavy, broken only by the distant howl of coyotes. Grant dismounted first, helping Theo down with a gentleness that surprised even him. The boy's legs wobbled, but his eyes held steady, reflecting the club's dying taillights. Jax approached, his scarred face softened by firelight as Lena sparked a portable stove, the flame dancing to life and casting flickering warmth. "What's the play, Stone?" Jax asked, voice low, passing around tin mugs of steaming coffee that smelled of earth and resolve. The crew gathered in a loose circle, vests unzipped, faces etched with the quiet loyalty that had forged them from strangers into kin. Grant spread the photo on a weathered crate, its edges curling like old wounds. "This is Elena Marrow, Theo's ma. She blew the whistle on Haven Freight years back. Shell outfits, laundering payoffs, shipments that never hit the books. They buried her complaint, made it look like she ran. I swore I'd have her back. And I let it slide." His words hung in the air, raw as the chill creeping in. Murmurs rippled through the group. Lena's hand paused mid-stir, her medic's instinct sensing the deeper scars. Jax nodded, pulling a battered tablet from his saddlebag, its screen glowing faintly. "We've got contacts in the grey zones, old logistics runners who owe favours. I can trace those companies, fictitious names, nested like Russian dolls." Theo watched, wide-eyed, as the club transformed into a machine of quiet purpose. No bluster, just the steady grind of men and women who'd stared down worse than corporate ghosts. But doubt gnawed at Grant, a shadow in his chest. What if Elena was gone for good, her trail cold as the depot's concrete? The boy deserved more than echoes, and the club, his family, deserved to know if this promise would drag them into a storm they couldn't outride. "We do this clean," Grant said, meeting each gaze in turn. "No guns, no headlines, just truth, pulling the threads till something unravels." Theo stepped forward, voice small but clear. "She taught me that. Said honor's what you do when no one's watching." The words struck like a spark, igniting nods around the circle. Lena knelt beside the boy, offering a blanket that smelled of pine and road dust. "You're safe here, kid. We've got your six." Night deepened, the silo looming like a forgotten vow. Jax worked the tablet, fingers flying over encrypted links, unearthing digital breadcrumbs. A defunct shell called Apex Relays, tied to Haven's old manifests. Complaints sealed under a veil of national interest clauses. Whispers of similar vanishings, workers who'd asked too many questions, their files redacted to blanks. Grant paced the perimeter, boots crunching frost-kissed earth, the photo burning a hole in his pocket. Memories flooded, Elena's laugh echoing in the depot's break room, her hand tracing the club's emblem on his arm, promising they'd build something real beyond the grind. He'd failed her once, letting the lie of her abandonment calcify his heart. But redemption wasn't a clean slate. It was hauling the weight forward, 1 mile at a time. As the first hints of dawn grayed the horizon, a ping from Jax's device broke the hush. A lead, faint but real. An address in a dusty border town linked to a retired foreman who'd signed Elena's last paycheck. The crew mounted up, engines stirring like awakening guardians. Theo climbed behind Grant again, this time with less hesitation, the bond forging in the shared silence. The convoy rolled out, headlights carving paths through the mist, toward answers that could shatter or mend. In the rear view, the silo faded, but the promise endured, a thread pulling them into the light. Justice wasn't loud. It was the steady rumble beneath, eroding lies until only truth remained. And now, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The border town of Dusthaven clung to the edge of nowhere like a half-forgotten dream. Its main street a ribbon of weathered storefronts baked under a sky the color of tarnished brass. Adobe walls peeled in the midday glare, and the air hummed with the lazy buzz of cicadas, undercut by the faint, acrid scent of sun-bleached sage and distant rain that never came. The convoy eased into town like shadows slipping through cracks, engines downshifted to a murmur that turned heads from porches and passing pickups. Grant led the way to a nondescript diner on the outskirts, its neon sign flickering, open in fits, the parking lot a graveyard of rusted hulks. Theo rode close behind him now, the boy's initial wariness melting into a quiet trust forged in the miles they'd shared. The Iron Promise crew dismounted in unison, a wall of leather and resolve, but their presence was understated. No revving displays, just the subtle scan of eyes that had learned to read threats in the wind. Inside, the diner smelled of grease and instant coffee, the kind that lingered on your tongue like regret. Worn booths sagged under faded vinyl, and a ceiling fan whirred overhead, stirring the heat without cooling it. Grant spotted the foreman right away, Hank Riley, 60-something with a face like cracked leather, hunched over a plate of eggs at the counter. Jax had pulled the name from those digital threads. Riley had overseen shifts at Haven Freight back when Elena's world unraveled, his signature on her final pay stub a breadcrumb leading here. Grant approached slow, signaling the crew to spread out, Lena at a corner table with Theo, offering the boy a menu like it was armor, while Jax and the others claimed spots near the door, casual but vigilant. "Mind if we join you?" Grant's voice cut through the diner's hush, low and even, as he slid onto a stool beside Riley. The older man glanced up, fork pausing midair, his eyes narrowing under bushy brows. Recognition flickered, not of Grant, but of the patch on his vest, the Iron Promise emblem, a symbol that carried weight in circles where promises meant survival. Riley set his fork down, wiping his mouth with a napkin that had seen better days. "Riders, huh? Ain't seen your kind round here since the old runs. What brings the promise to Dusthaven?" Grant leaned in, the photo unfolded on the counter between them like a bridge across years. Elena's image stared up, her smile undimmed by time. Riley's breath hitched, color draining from his cheeks, as if the picture had sucked the warmth from the room. "Her," he muttered, voice rough as gravel. "Elena Marrow. God, that takes me back. Worked under me at Haven, sharp as a tack with the manifests. Too sharp, maybe." He glanced around the diner, the gesture instinctive, like a man who'd spent decades checking his six. The waitress bustled by, coffee pot in hand, but her eyes lingered a beat too long on the bikers before she poured refills and moved on. Theo edged closer from his booth, drawn by the pull of the conversation, his small frame tense but unyielding. Grant nodded him over, the boy perching on the stool's edge, fingers tracing the photo's border. "She was my mom," Theo said simply, the words carrying the weight of unspoken pleas. Riley's gaze softened, landing on the kid with a mix of pity and something sharper. Guilt, perhaps. "Yeah, I figured." Saw the eyes. "Listen, son, your ma. She was good people. Started asking questions about the books. Shipments logged but never delivered. Money vanishing into pockets up the chain. Shell companies, they called them, fronts for bigger fish. She filed a report, quiet-like, thinking it'd fix things." Grant's hands clenched under the counter, knuckles whitening against the worn wood. The diner's fan droned on, but the air thickened, charged with the echo of old failures. He'd been there that night under the depot's sodium lights, Elena's voice fierce as she vowed to expose the rot. "We'll do it together," she'd said, her hand in his. The promise sealing like hot wax, but he'd shipped out the next dawn, club business pulling him away, leaving her to face the fallout alone. Riley continued, voice dropping to a whisper that scraped against the clink of dishes. "Next thing, complaints get sealed. Some clause about protecting operations. Bosses whispered threats, nothing direct, but enough to make a body disappear. Elena came to me, scared but stubborn. Said she had proof tucked away, copies of ledgers, told her to lay low, but she wouldn't. Last I saw, she was packing up, kid in tow, heading out before they could corner her. The words landed like punches, each one cracking the armor Grant had built mile by mile. Theo's face paled, but he held steady, absorbing the fragments like a puzzle he'd been assembling in secret. Did she leave a message? For someone? The boy's question hung, vulnerable in the stale air. Riley hesitated, then slid a napkin across, scribbling an address. A rundown motel on the town's edge, long shuttered. She dropped by once, years back, before vanishing for good. Left this with the owner. Said if a rider named Stone ever came asking, give it to him. Figured it was just talk, but here you are. He pushed the napkin toward Grant, eyes shadowed. Be careful. Those shells ain't dead, they're Hydra heads. Folks still watch for loose ends. Outside, the sun beat down mercilessly as the crew regrouped in the lot, the diner's door jingling shut behind them. Jax pocketed the napkin, already mapping the motel's coordinates on his tablet, while Lena checked Theo over with a mother's eye, handing him a water bottle cool from the truck. Grant stood apart for a moment, staring at the horizon where dust clouds bloomed like warnings. The promise he'd buried rose again, not as a chain but a compass, pointing toward truths that could redeem or destroy. Failure had scarred him, but this, facing it with the club at his back, Theo's quiet courage lighting the way, felt like the first step toward mending. We hit the motel at dusk, he said, voice steady now, the resolve hardening like cooling steel. Quiet, no ripples. The convoy fired up, a low symphony of engines blending with the town's fading hum. Theo climbed on behind Grant, arms wrapping firm. The shared silence, a bond stronger than words. As they rolled toward the motel's silhouette, shadows lengthening across the cracked earth, Grant felt the weight shift, not lighter, but purposeful. Redemption whispered in the wind, promising that some oaths outlasted the lies, turning ghosts into guardians. The road curved ahead, fraught with unseen turns, but the iron promise rode as one, loyalty, the engine driving them through the gathering dark. The motel squatted on the frayed edge of Dusthaven like a relic from a harder era, its stucco walls cracked and sun-faded to the hue of old bone. Dusk bled across the sky in streaks of crimson and indigo, the light filtering through dust motes that danced like restless spirits. Chain-link fences sagged around the perimeter, overgrown with tumbleweeds that whispered against the wind, carrying the faint, metallic tang of rust and abandonment. The Iron Promise convoy approached slow, headlights off to blend with the gathering shadows, engines throttled to a purr that barely disturbed the gravel. Grant's bike led, Theo's arms locked around his midsection, the boy's breath steady now, a quiet anchor in the uncertainty. Behind them, Jax flanked left, Lena right, the rest of the crew a silent phalanx, their loyalty a shield forged in countless unseen battles. They parked in the lot's far corner, away from the single flickering bulb over the office door, its buzz a lonely insect in the cooling air. The place was a ghost, windows boarded, paint peeling like shed skin, the vacancy sign long dark. Grant dismounted first, boots crunching softly as he scanned the row of doors, each numbered with flaking metal tags. Riley's napkin burned in his pocket, the scrawled address pointing to room 7, end of the line. "Stay sharp," he murmured to the group, voice low as the encroaching night. Theo slid off the bike, sticking close, his eyes wide but resolute. The photo from earlier now, a folded weight in his hand. Lena knelt beside him, her medic's kit slung over one shoulder. "You don't have to go in, kid. We've got this." But Theo shook his head, jaw set. Mom left it for him, for us. Jax moved ahead, lockpick glinting in the dim light as he worked the office door first. No Clark, just echoes of forgotten check-ins. Inside, the air hung stale, thick with the scent of mildew and faded cigarette smoke. A dusty ledger on the counter yielded nothing recent but Jack's rifled drawers, pulling out a keyring heavy with tarnished brass. The crew fanned out, silent as they approached room 7, the door ajar just a crack, as if inviting secrets to spill. Grant's heart thudded, a drumbeat against his ribs. Memories of Elena surfacing like ghosts in the half-light, her voice promising forever under depot stars, the way her touch had mended fractures he didn't know he carried. He'd failed that vow, letting distance and doubt erode it, but here, with the club at his back, failure felt like a shadow he could finally outrun. Pushing the door open with a gloved hand, Grant stepped inside, the hinges creaking like a warning. The room was a time capsule of despair, a sagging bed with threadbare sheets, a nightstand scarred by years of neglect, curtains drawn against the dying sun. Dust motes swirled in the beam of Jax's flashlight, illuminating a small envelope taped to the mirror above a cracked sink. Grant's breath caught as he peeled it free, the paper yellowed, Elena's handwriting looping across the front. "For Stone, if you come." His fingers trembled, unfolding it with care, the words blurring through a haze of emotion. "I hid the copies in the old well behind the diner, proof of the shells. Apex and 3 more tied to the depot's heart. They took everything but not my fight. Protect Theo. Keep your promise." No date, just her signature, fierce and unbroken, a lifeline across the abyss. Theo peered over Grant's shoulder, his small gasp echoing in the confined space. "She knew you'd find it," the boy whispered, voice thick with a mix of awe and ache. Grant sank onto the bed's edge, the frame groaning under his weight, the envelope clutched like a sacred relic. Tears pricked again, not the raw flood from the roadside, but a steady burn, years of self-imposed exile cracking under the weight of her faith in him. The club gathered close, Lena's hand on his shoulder a quiet reassurance, Jack's already snapping photos of the note for later decryption. But the moment shattered with a low rumble outside, not their bikes, but a truck engine, headlights sweeping the lot like searchlights. Shadows moved beyond the window, 2 figures emerging, silhouettes against the neon glow, their voices carrying snippets of urgency. "Check the room. Loose ends." Tension coiled through the room, thick as the dust. Grant rose, tucking the envelope away, his resolve stealing like the first light of dawn. "Out the back," he ordered, voice a gravel command that brooked no argument. The crew moved like a well-oiled machine, slipping through a rear window into the scrub beyond, Theo hoisted by Lena's steady arms. They melted into the night, circling wide to their bikes, the intruders none the wiser as they breached the office. But as the convoy regrouped on a rise overlooking the motel, Jax's tablet pinged, a trace on the truck's plates, linking back to a subsidiary of Apex Relays, the very shell Elena had named. Corruption's tendrils reached far, but so did the promise's reach. Grant pulled Theo aside under the stars, the boy's face upturned, searching. "Your ma." "She never stopped believing," Grant said, words rough but true. "I let her down once, kid. Won't again." Theo nodded, a small smile breaking through. The first real one since the roadside. The club mounted up, engines stirring low, the path to the diner and the well clear in the moonlight. But doubt lingered in Grant's chest, a ethical thorn. Unearthing this could drag innocence into the fire, test the club's oaths against a system built on buried truths. Yet loyalty demanded it, the family chosen in leather and chrome standing firm. Redemption wasn't absolution. It was the act of digging, pulling light from the dark, one promise at a time. As they rolled toward the diner's silhouette, the wind carrying whispers of sage and resolve, Grant felt the fracture in his soul begin to knit. Elena's words echoed, a moral compass in the chaos. Honor wasn't loud victories, but quiet reckonings, the courage to face what you'd fled. The road twisted ahead, fraught with watchers in the shadows, but the iron promise rode unbroken, turning a boy's hand into a force that no veil could hide. Justice brewed in the silence, patient and unyielding, ready to wash the lies from the earth. If this chapter moved you, please hit that like button. It helps these stories reach more hearts in need of hope. The moon hung low over Dusthaven, like a silver medallion, casting elongated shadows that stretched across the diner's cracked parking lot. The air had cooled to a crisp edge, carrying the earthy whisper of night-blooming creosote and the distant yip of jackrabbits fleeing the underbrush. Grant's convoy ghosted in from the east, bikes threading silently through the back alleys, their low rumble muffled by the town's indifferent hush. Theo clung to Grant's back, the boy's warmth a steady pulse against the chill, his earlier smile now tempered by the weight of what lay ahead. The envelope from the motel burned in Grant's vest pocket. Elena's words, a mantra looping in his mind. Protect Theo, keep your promise. The iron promise riders flanked him, Jax on point with his tablet's faint glow, Lena trailing with eyes sharp as scalpels, the others a vigilant arc ensuring no eyes from the shadows could flank them. They cut the engines 100 yards out, wheeling the bikes into a thicket of mesquite that scratched at leather like insistent fingers. The diner loomed ahead, its rear facade a patchwork of peeling plaster and boarded windows, the closed sign swaying gently in the breeze. Riley's tales echoed in Grant's ears, the foreman's reluctant confession of sealed complaints, the hydra of shell companies devouring truths whole. But this well, hidden behind the building, promised the heart of it, ledgers, manifests, proof that could crack the depot's facade wide open. Grant motioned the crew forward, their boots soft on the gravel, breaths measured to blend with the night's cadence. Theo stayed glued to his side, small but unbowed, the photo now tucked safe in Lena's pack. Circling to the back, they found the well under a canopy of overgrown oleander, its stone rim weathered to a grey patina, choked with vines that rasped against probing hands. No marker, no fanfare, just a rusted iron grate half sunk in the earth, the kind of forgotten relic that swallowed secrets without complaint. Jax knelt first, flashlight beam slicing the dark, revealing a chain dangling into the abyss, slick with decades of moisture. "Deep," he muttered, voice a thread in the quiet. "But if she hid it here, it's got to be sealed tight." Lena uncoiled a rope from her kit, the fibers coarse and reliable, while the others formed a perimeter, silhouettes against the moonlit scrub, ears tuned to the faintest crunch of approach. Grant helped lower Jax, the rope humming through gloved palms, Theo's gaze fixed on the well's mouth like it held the stars themselves. Minutes stretched, the night pressing in, until Jax's voice echoed up muffled but triumphant. "Got something. Metal box, taped waterproof, heavy." They hauled him up slow, muscles straining under the load, the box emerging slick and barnacled with grime. Grant pried it open under the beam, heart hammering as yellowed folders spilled out, ledgers in Elena's precise script, manifests cross-referenced with fictitious invoices, bank transfers to Apex relays, and 2 more ghosts, Vanguard Hall and Echo Freight. Dates blurred into a timeline of deceit, from Elena's first suspicions to her vanishing. Each page a nail in the coffin of lies Grant had half believed. Theo's fingers brushed a corner, eyes widening at a clipped news article tucked inside, faded ink on a generic protection act that shielded corporate shadows, but underlined in red, names of depot brass, ties to higher powers that made the air feel thinner. "She fought this," the boy said, voice barely above the wind, a mix of pride and sorrow etching his young face. Grant nodded, the weight of her ingenuity crashing over him like a desert squall. Elena hadn't run blindly. She'd buried the blade, waiting for the right hand to wield it. His own failure stung anew. not just abandoning the promise, but doubting her strength, letting the road's miles calcify his grief into indifference. But here, in this forsaken spot, redemption stirred, not as erasure, but as restitution, the club's quiet code demanding he honor what she'd preserved. A snap from the tree line shattered the moment, twigs under boot, too deliberate for wildlife. Lena's hand flew to her sidearm, holstered but ready, while Jack sealed the box, slinging it over his shoulder like contraband gold. "Company," Grant whispered, eyes scanning the dark, where two figures detached from the brush, their outlines bulky with intent, one cradling what looked like a shotgun in the moonlight. Not locals, these were watchers, the same breed Riley had warned of, tendrils from the shells uncoiling to silence loose ends. The crew closed ranks. Theo pulled behind Grant's bulk, the boy's breath quick but silent, schooled by nights of hidden fears. No words passed. The intruders advanced, voices low and edged. "Hand over the kid. We know what you're digging." Grant stepped forward, hands visible but voice steel. "Walk away. This ain't your fight." The leader sneered, moonlight glinting off a badge, private security, the kind that blurred lines with authority, paid to bury rather than unearth. Tension crackled, the air electric with unspoken threats, but iron promise didn't draw first. Jax shifted, a distraction feint, while Lena edged left, her medic's calm masking the readiness to patch what violence might rend. The standoff stretched, hearts pounding in unison, until the leader's radio crackled, a dispatch cutting through. "Stand down! Bigger eyes on this." They hesitated, then melted back into the shadows, truck engine coughing to life in the distance, tires spitting dust as they fled. The crew exhaled as one, the adrenaline ebbing into wary relief. Grant knelt before Theo, the boy's eyes reflecting the well's dark echo. "Your ma built this for moments like us," he said, palm on the kid's shoulder, the touch conveying what words couldn't, the family's embrace extending to this fragile link. Jack secured the box on his bike, already plotting encrypted uploads to trusted allies, the proof of virus that would spread through back channels, eroding the corruption from within. No raids, no spectacle. Just the steady drip of truth, iron promises way, loyalty as the quiet revolution. As they mounted up, the diner fading in the rear view, Grant felt the fracture in his core shift toward healing. Elena's fight wasn't over. It lived in these pages, in Theo's courage, in the oaths that bound the riders tighter than blood. But doubt lingered, a psychological barb. Unearthing this could summon storms that tested every vow, pitting moral justice against a machine greased with power. Yet the road called, twisting toward the depot's shadow where final reckonings awaited. The convoy rolled into the night, engines a harmonious growl, carrying promises that outlasted the dark, turning personal redemption into a legacy etched in unyielding honor. The pre-dawn haze cloaked the highway like a shroud, the convoy's headlights carving faint tunnels through the mist that rose from the cooling earth. Grant's bike led the pack, the engine's steady thrum, a counterpoint to the turmoil churning in his gut. Theo's arms encircled his waist, the boy's head occasionally nodding against his back, exhaustion claiming what fear had spared. Behind them, the Iron Promise riders maintained formation, Jax's silhouette hunched over his handlebars, the metal box strapped secure like a talisman of reckoning. Lena rode close, her gaze flicking to the mirrors, ever the sentinel. The air rushed past, laced with the sharp resin of juniper and the faint ozone of an approaching storm, a sensory prelude to the confrontation looming at Haven Freight's gates. Miles blurred into a meditative rhythm, but Grant's mind replayed the night's fragments, Elena's envelope, the ledger's damning script, the intruder's retreat under that crackling radio call. The shells weren't dormant. They pulsed with life, protected by layers of fabricated legitimacy, a protection act that shielded predators under the guise of order. He'd let Elena walk into that web alone, his promise fracturing under the club's distant calls, the road's endless pull. Now, with Theo's quiet faith anchoring him, failure transformed into fuel, a moral imperative to unearth what corruption had interred. Redemption demanded more than tears. It required the club's unyielding loyalty to drag light into the depths. As the first blush of sunrise gilded the horizon, the depot emerged from the flatlands, a sprawling fortress of chain link and concrete bunkers, floodlights humming like watchful eyes. Haven Freight sprawled under the paling sky, its rusted cranes silent sentinels, the air thick with the metallic bite of lingering oil and diesel ghosts. The convoy slowed at the perimeter road, pulling into a copse of scrub oak that offered scant cover. Grant killed his engine, the sudden quiet amplifying the distant clank of early shifts stirring within. Theo dismounted, rubbing sleep from his eyes, but his stance held a newfound steel, the Wells discovery etching purpose into his young frame. "This is it?" the boy asked, voice hushed, glancing at the imposing gates where a security booth glowed faintly. "Yeah, kid. Where it all started, and where we end it." Grant's words carried the weight of oaths renewed, his hand briefly squeezing Theo's shoulder, a gesture that bridged their disparate worlds. The crew gathered in a tight huddle, vests zipped against the chill, faces illuminated by Jax's tablet screen. He spread the ledger's scans, fingers tracing digital paths, Apex relays funneling funds to Vanguard and Echo, a triad siphoning depot profits into offshore voids, all tied to Brass, who'd risen on Silent's descent. Elena's notes annotated the margins, names, dates, veiled threats logged in her unerring hand. "We've got enough to light a fire," Jax said, voice a low rumble. "Anonymous drops to oversight boards. Leaks to the independents who still chase truth, but we need eyes inside first. Confirm the rot's still breathing." Lena nodded, unpacking a compact drone from her saddlebag, its propellers whispering to life with a soft whir. Recon only. No footprints. She launched it skyward, the device vanishing into the mist, feeding live feeds to the tablet. Empty lots at this hour, but security patrols thickening near the admin block, a flicker of activity around a locked warehouse that matched Elena's old manifests. Tension rippled through the group as the drone captured a glimpse. Crates stamped with Vanguard labels, guards exchanging nods that spoke of complicity. Theo watched the screen, his breath catching at a faded sign. Marrow shift. Elena's legacy, etched in peeling paint. "She worked there," he murmured, the words a bridge to the woman who'd vanished, leaving him to carry her fire. But as the drone circled back, a glitch interrupted the feed. Jamming signal. Jax cursed under his breath, packing it away. "They're onto something. We go in quiet. 2 teams, me and Stone to the fence line, Lena with the kid advantage. Rest hold the road." Grant met each eye. The family's bond a silent vow, no glory in chaos, only the honor of measured justice. They moved like wraiths, cutting through the scrub, the fence's razor wire glinting in the strengthening light. Grant's pulse thrummed, ethical shadows crowding his thoughts. This intrusion skirted lines, pitting their moral code against institutional walls built on forgotten lives. What if the proof ignited backlash, endangering Theo or drawing the club's gaze into a storm? Yet loyalty silenced doubt. Elena's promise, Theo's trust, demanded they press on. Slipping through a gap in the chain link, concealed by overgrown weeds that scratched at their leathers, Grant and Jax crouched low, the depot's hum vibrating through the ground. They edged toward the admin building, a squat concrete edifice with windows shuttered against prying eyes. Jax worked a side door's lock with practiced finesse, the click echoing like a heartbeat in the dawn's hush. Inside, the air hung stale, reeking of stale coffee and archived deceit. Fluorescent strips buzzing overhead, File cabinets lined the walls, labels faded but ominous. Sealed operations. Grant's gloved hands rifled drawers, pulling folders that corroborated the ledgers, redacted reports, Elena's original complaint buried under layers of withdrawn stamps, signatures from men now perched in corner offices. A floorboard creaked behind them, freezing the air. Grant spun, fist ready to face a night shift clerk, mid-40s, wide-eyed, hands raised in surrender. "Whoa! Easy! I ain't armed." The man's voice trembled, but his gaze darted to the folders, recognition dawning. Jack stepped forward, blocking the exit, but Grant held up a hand. Violence wasn't their creed. "You know about the shells? The woman who spoke up years back?" The clerk swallowed, glancing at the door, then nodded, defeat etching his features. "Elena Marrow. Saw her file once before they purged it. Good lady, asked the wrong questions. They made her go away. Threats, shadows at her door. I kept quiet, got a family." His confession spilled like a dam breaking, laced with the guilt of survival. "Bosses still run it the same. That warehouse? Full of ghosts." Theo's voice crackled over the comms from Lena's vantage, urgent but controlled. "Movement at the gates. Suits, not guards. Looks official." Grant's jaw tightened, the pieces aligning into a noose. The clerk paled further. "Feds? Nah, worse. Corporate cleaners. They sniff leaks." No time for more. Grant pressed a folder into the man's hands. "Burn this if you want redemption, or join the fight quiet-like." The clerk hesitated, then pocketed it, nodding. A spark of integrity ignited in the dim hall. They slipped out as alarms began a distant wail, the depot awakening to intrusion, shadows lengthening into pursuit. Reuniting at the fence, the crew bolted for the bikes, engines roaring to life in a symphony of escape. Bullets whizzed past, warning shots from the perimeter, the air snapping with tension. But Iron Promise rode as one, weaving through the scrub, dust plumes masking their trail. Theo's grip on Grant tightened, the boy's exhilaration mingling with fear, a testament to courage born of necessity. As they crested a rise, the depot shrinking in the mirrors, Jax whooped softly, the box and new files secure. But Grant's chest ached with the moral precipice. They'd stirred the Hydra, its heads rising to strike. Justice wasn't a clean blade. It drew blood, tested oaths, forced choices between safety and honor. The convoy pushed east, toward neutral ground, where allies waited to amplify the truth. Reporters unbound by corporate leashes, watchdogs in the gray. Dawn broke fully now, painting the sky in hues of amber and resolve. The wind carrying the promise of storms yet to break. Grant glanced back at Theo, the boy's eyes alight with a fire mirroring Elena's. Failure had scarred him, but this reckoning mended, thread by thread, the family's loyalty weaving redemption from the frayed edges of regret. The road unfurled, fraught with watchers and whispers, but the Iron Promise pressed on, turning buried oaths into an unquenchable light, where one boy's hand had unleashed a tide no corruption could contain. The sun climbed high over the eastern plains, turning the asphalt into a ribbon of molten silver that shimmered under the relentless gaze. Grant's convoy cut through the heat, engines humming a steady dirge, the wind whipping dust into veils that stung exposed skin and carried the sharp tang of wild mustard blooming along the shoulders. Theo's hold around Grant's waist had eased into something familial, no longer tentative but trusting, the boy's chin occasionally resting against the rider's shoulder, as if drawing strength from the shared rhythm. Behind them, the Iron Promise pack rode tight, Jax's bike weaving slightly as he monitored the rear view for tails, the metal box and pilfered files lashed secure against the vibrations. Lena's eyes, sharp through her visor, scanned the horizon, her medic's pack a constant reminder of the human cost lurking in every shadow. They veered off the highway onto a rutted dirt track, the kind that swallowed secrets and spat out only the resolute, leading to a nondescript ranch house nestled in a fold of the hills. Smoke curled lazily from its chimney, the scent of mesquite barbecue mingling with the dry earth, a beacon for those who operated in the margins. This was neutral ground, a haven run by old allies, retired investigators and ink-stained journalists who traded badges for independence, their network a web of quiet dissent against the machine. Grant signaled the halt, tires crunching to a stop in the yard where a weathered pickup sat under a tin-roofed lean-to, its hood propped open like an invitation. The crew dismounted, stretching limbs stiff from the dawn's frenzy, the air buzzing with the low drone of cicadas that amplified the post-escape hush. An older woman emerged from the house, her silver hair tied back, face lined with the wisdom of battles won in whispers. Maria Voss, once a depot whistleblower herself, now a conduit for truths too hot for official channels. She nodded to Grant, eyes flicking to Theo, with a warmth that softened the edges of her gaze. Stone. Been a spell. Heard whispers of your detour. Brought the storm, I see. Her voice was gravel honey, laced with the accent of forgotten frontiers. Jax handed over the box without a word, the ledgers and files spilling onto a scarred oak table inside, where lamplight cast long shadows across yellowed pages. The room smelled of aged paper and strong tea, walls lined with corkboards pinned to bursting with redacted clippings and anonymous tips. A war room disguised as home. Theo hovered near the table, fingers tracing Elena's handwriting, the loops and dashes a map of her unyielding spirit. Grant stood beside him, the weight of the morning's intrusion still coiling in his chest, ethical echoes questioning the cost, the clerk's fearful eyes, the shots cracking like judgments. But as Maria pored over the evidence, her murmurs building to a quiet fury, apex to vanguard, echoes the cutout. This ties straight to the boardroom ghosts. Doubt yielded to purpose. She'd connect it to broader leaks, funneling copies to watchdogs who'd amplify without fingerprints, eroding the shells from the foundations up. No headlines screaming vengeance, just the inexorable drip of exposure, justice as a slow burn that honored Elena's method. Hours slipped by in a haze of strategy, the sun arcing toward noon, painting the windows in golden bars. Jax coordinated digital drops, his tablet a portal to encrypted allies, while Lena brewed coffee that steamed with bitter resolve, sharing stories with Theo of riders who'd mended more than machines. The boy listened, eyes alight, absorbing the club's tapestry, ex-soldiers like Grant, healers like her, all woven by oaths that outlasted scars. Grant stepped outside for air, the porch creaking under his boots, the vast sky a canvas of unmarred blue that mocked the corruption's grasp. Memories flooded. Elena's laugh in the depot's dim glow, her promise, whispered fierce, "We'll build something real, Stone, beyond this grind." And his own, sworn in the heat of that moment, shattered by absence and lies. He'd collapsed at the roadside, a titan felled by regret, but Theo's hand, small and steady, had rebuilt him, brick by moral brick. A soft footfall pulled him back. Theo approached, the photo in hand, its edges softened by handling. "Maria says it'll work. The truth. It'll stick this time." The boy's voice held a quiet conviction, mirroring the woman who'd raised him in hiding, teaching survival through stories of honor unbroken. Grant knelt to his level, the dust of the yard puffing around them, the distant whinny of horses from the corral underscoring the moment's fragility. "Your ma didn't just hide the proof, kid. She hid hope. In you. I failed her once. Let the miles bury what I swore. But you're family now. In promise means we carry each other, no matter the weight." Tears welled, not cascading but held, a dam of emotion channeling into resolve. Theo nodded, leaning into the embrace, the hug brief but binding, a chosen kinship sealing the fractures. Inside, Maria's voice rose in triumph. A contact confirmed, the first leak dispatched, ripples already stirring in the digital undercurrents. The shells would fracture, brass exposed under the glare of independent scrutiny, the Protection Act crumbling as more voices joined the chorus. No arrests in the night, no cycles of retribution, just the poetic justice of truths unearthed, honoring the silenced with daylight. Grant watched from the doorway as the crew packed up, vests zipped, faces etched with the quiet satisfaction of oaths fulfilled. Jax clapped his shoulder, Lena ruffled Theo's hair, the family expanding without fanfare, loyalty, the invisible thread pulling them whole. As the convoy reformed under the climbing sun, engines stirring like awakening resolve, Grant lifted Theo onto the bike, the boy's legs dangling with easy confidence. The road stretched east, toward open skies untainted by depot shadows, the wind promising fresh horizons. Elena's spirit lingered in the rear view. Not a ghost, but a guardian, her promise redeemed through this reckoning. Grant had collapsed once, hardened heart cracking like parched earth, but from those tears rose a legacy. Sacrifice as the truest honor, actions silent yet seismic, turning personal redemption into a beacon for the lost. The miles unspooled, the iron promise roaring forward, bound by words that survived the storm, where one boy's courage had ignited a fire no darkness could quench. Thank you for riding with us through this tale of promises kept and hearts mended. If the iron promises stories of loyalty and quiet justice resonate with you, please subscribe for more chapters of redemption on the open road. We'd be honored to have you in the family.